The issue of having to deal with rising food prices is very key at this point in time. And we just about 2 weeks ago, it was in the news that for those who consume bread, you may have to expect a hike in price. And it's everything underscores the issue that internationally food prices is on the increase. And if Africa is regarded as the savior, so to speak, of the world in terms of having to produce more. We've seen countries come here to own farmlands. China, for instance, is going all around the world, taking advantage of an economy that may not be too buoyant, pumps in billions of dollars in there and transform the whole place. I think we need to take advantage of this in order to bring down the rise in food prices because of wheat. Wheat has gone up in the international market. At a point in time, we couldn't. Some countries were not exporting because they felt that they needed to take care of their own local market. But what can we do in the future, going forward, as to be able to contain and control somehow prices of this kind of commodities?
Well, many developed countries coming down here, it's actually reasonable to so do. Because if you take Nigeria, for instance, we have about 923,000 hectares of land, but only 35% is being used. And so most of the land is still being left arable. Yes, arable.
That are not maybe inhabited by people.
Sure.
There are no estates or buildings on them.
Sure.
So, given the fact that, what are we doing about that?
Well, in the first place, we need some capital, we need some resources to really do more, to really farm more. But those are limiting. Of course, we have the Zimbabwean farmers in Kwara State, whereby they are producing under the Songa or something. It only means that we have opportunities to plant more, to produce more. But all these are not taking place because of the resource poor nature of our farmers. Because the technologies have not really been forwarded to them for adoption. Because sufficient monitoring has not been put in place by the government. Because the private sector have not really been given sufficient incentives to really move into the production. And that needs to be done.
We seem to be running out of time. I just wanted to comment on that issue of private sector. You are a private sector operator in terms of having to be a farmer and you own your own. How has that been? How well is the private sector participating in the development of the agriculture sector? We've seen the participation of the private sector in the banking industry, another part of the economy, the real sector of the economy, like we used to call them. But how well have they been participating?
Well, the private sector have been trying. We've been trying all our possible best, but when the environment is not that conducive, it's a big problem. Because the private sector can come and use its money to expand on agricultural sector. But what about the infrastructures? Like the road that leads to my farm, you cannot even walk it. Anytime we bring eggs from our farm, it's always a lot of cracks. We have invited the attention of the government to come and do the line. There's no light, there's no road. It's just like the processing plant that we are taking to the city. It's supposed to be
in the rural area,
in the countryside. But there's no road, there's no light, the security is not there. So that's why we're moving to the town, because no reasonable person will come to the bush and come and be buying our products. So that's why we're having our outlets, which is the value chain in the town. Yes, the private sector is trying its best, but the government needs to do more to encourage most of the private sectors.
Okay, you mentioned the issue of, I'm still going to stick to Mr. We don't have much time. I'm just trying to wrap up everything. The issue of abandoned farm projects. You mentioned that when you were talking, and you said, I can imagine how many of these projects that we have in this country. What is our government doing, or what can they do to revive them? You know, because if a particular project has been abandoned for about 20 years, you can imagine the prosperity that we have, locked up in that particular area.
Yes, as I said, the new Minister for Agriculture, Dr. Adeokuta, is trying his best, trying to bring in some of the private sector to revive some of this abandoned project, and that is why I was privileged to go to Lukman Farm Estate. But a lot still have to do. He still have to do more in terms of not just going to inspect the project, but to make sure that this project is being actualized, because we are losing most of our youth into crimes, into hoodlums, when we could have channeled some of these youth that have nothing to do into agriculture, into farming. They will provide employment, they will provide food to the table of of the Nigerians. So there's a lot that the government can learn by really supporting the private sectors to really reverse some of these farm estates.
On a final note, Professor, we have to close up this for us. Africa has been seen as a country that would lead the way to sustainable way in the future in terms of having to develop agriculture for the global economy. What do you think this would mean for us if we take advantage of the potentials that we have in this continent?
Yes, we have the capacity, we have the land, we have the we have the labor resources. It's only that we don't have the capital and the technology.
So it's about having to fund them.
So we have to fund them as well as extend sufficient technologies for that.
Okay.
I was just reading just today in the paper that Guinness has made Nigeria as the most profitable place. But how much is Guinness doing in agriculture? How much is Nestle doing in agriculture? So some incentives need to be given to them.
So the private sector needs to move in.
They need to move in.
And since they make the money here,
yes, since they make the money here, they should also contribute to development of agriculture.